Welcome everyone to Living with the Times. This week's Torah portion is Mitzorah, and the first part describes how a person who was stricken with the skin disease called tzara'at, commonly translated as leprosy, but we know from our sages it was a skin ailment, but was brought on by spiritual reasons. And in the beginning of Mitzorah, it explains the purification process. And here we can connect to a very, very important teaching of the Baal Shem Tov. The Baal Shem Tov taught that every process goes through three stages. In Hebrew, Hachna'ah, Havdalah, and Hamtakah, which means Hachna'ah means submission, Havdalah means separation, Hamtakah means sweetening. So what does this mean that every process goes through these three steps? So I'm going to take an example, but it can be applied in almost infinite amount of ways. Every process. So let's say a person has a task to perform or decides they want to do something or accomplish something. So the first step is what's called hachna'ah, submission. A person has to truly submit themselves that they're really going to do this. How many times do we think, I'd like to do this, I'd like to do that, but then we never do it. We never even start the process. So every process starts with what's called submission, where we submit ourselves that we're going to do this. Now the task could take 5 minutes, could take 5 hours, it could take 5 months, it could take 5 years. But every process will go through these steps. So first we have to apply ourselves. We have to submit and decide that we're going to do whatever we've decided to do. The next stage is called separation, Havdalah, where once we've decided to do something, then we have a constant decision making as to what is going to bring me closer to my goal and what is going to take me far away, what's going to distract me. And this is a process called separation. I have to separate out on a daily level those things that will interfere with my doing what I'm doing, or at least we have to demark for the next 2 hours, the next 3 minutes, whatever it is, I am doing X, Y, or Z to fulfill this task. So that's called separation. It's a decision-making process that allows us to focus on what we want to do. The third part is called hamtakah, is sweetening. And that means when I accomplish what I want to accomplish, that I'm actually happy with it. How many times do we pick a goal and we actually go through with it? And then when we get to the end, it doesn't turn out the way we had hoped it would turn out. So that's not very sweet. So sweetening is, after all the hard work, we actually appreciate and are happy with it. And even more so, that we acknowledge the help that we got from God, from others. And we're just happy to be able to praise God and those who helped us for letting us accomplish what we could accomplish. So again, these three processes. So now we're going to take that and apply it to the purification process of someone who has this skin ailment. So first is what's called submission. When the person first notices that they have this ailment, they're brought to the Kohen. And the Kohen has the power to decide either they have to be quarantined or perhaps they don't have what it is. It's not this particular disease called sara'at. So the first thing is the person has to submit to the laws of the Torah that will determine if he has and how to become purified through this process. In most cases, actually in all cases, if a person actually has this disease, they have to be sent into isolation. For 7 days, they have to leave the camp and they have to dwell by themselves. And this gives them time to contemplate what they have done to bring this upon themselves. So this is called the second stage, separation, Havdalah. They're literally separated, quarantined, isolated, from the community. And then in this parsha, it explains a very powerful, potent, symbolic ritual that the person goes through. And in a certain way, the climactic moment, it's not the end of the process, but is a bird is taken and set free. And that symbolizes a person is now able to come back into the camp. They still have to go through another 7 days of purification, and then another ritual, and then they are part of the community again, and they've finished the spiritual cleansing and tshuva process. And so the sending away of the bird and coming back into the camp is the sweetening, is the hamtakah. So here we see how this person has gone through the whole process, submitting to the law, being separated, and then being reunited with the community after a process of tshuva. Later in the parsha, it goes into the laws of what are called the laws of family purity, that designates when a husband and wife are allowed to be together intimately. When a woman menstruates and sees blood, so the man and the woman have to separate. And then after the purification process, which takes usually approximately 12 days, she goes to the mikvah, and it's like wedding night, and they reunite. So here we see the same process, that as soon as the woman begins her menstruation, they have to submit themselves to the Jewish law, to the lifestyle of the laws of family purity. And that takes a lot of submission. And then they separate. There's no physical contact between them for approximately 12 days. There's still obviously a relationship, but it's not a physically intimate relationship. So that's the separation. And then when the woman goes to the mikvah and they can be reunited, it truly is like wedding night. And that is the sweetening. That's the hamtakah. One more way we could see this process, going back to the person who has this skin ailment. So the Or HaChaim, a great commentator from Morocco, so he explains that this is more than just happening to one person. The person who's sent outside of the camp, this represents all of Israel. And having this skin disease is the reasons behind the exile, the reasons behind the destruction of the temples that led us into exile. And these were for the misdeeds that we did, that we didn't listen properly to the Torah, we didn't build a just society as we were commanded to, and we were sent into exile. And so this whole idea of the person with Tzara'at represents all of Israel being sent into exile. So the submission is understanding that we are in exile for things that we brought upon ourselves. And then we're separated. That's the second stage. But then it says that the Kohen goes out and he sees if the person is now ready to be purified. So the Or HaChaim says this is, as it were, God at the end of the exile, seeing that it's time for the redemption. And then we go through the purification process, and then coming back into the camp is like all of Israel coming back home. And so we know that after 2,000 years of exile, in the last approximately 120 years, 140 years, we have been coming back to Israel. God is bringing us back, just like all the prophets said, that at the end of days, God would bring us back from the four corners of the world, and the cities would be rebuilt, and the land would turn green and productive. And here we are, in a sense, in not the middle of the story, but towards the end of the story, we're being brought back into the camp. This is the sweetening. And yet we know we're not quite there yet. We have 1 foot in redemption, but we're not quite there. I think everyone's aware of the problems that we're going through now, the war in Israel, the rise in anti-Semitism around the world. But we do have 1 foot in redemption. We are back in the land. And they say within just a few years, a majority of Jews will be living again in Israel for the first time in 2,500 years. And so here again, we have the 3 stages of this process, that the submission and our continual loyalty to the Torah and God. What other people would have gone through what we've gone through and stayed loyal to the Torah and stayed loyal to the covenant with God? And so we submitted our state in exile. And in exile is like the separation. We're, in a sense, outside the camp of the nations of the world. But now God is bringing us back, not just into the camp of the nations, but to the center of that camp. Israel has always been the center of the world. Yerushalayim Yer HaKodesh. And so we're waiting for the final sweetening. We're almost there. We're almost there. So everyone hold on, and let's increase our prayers, increase our good deeds, increase our identity with the Torah, our connection to God, and Bezrat Hashem, we will see the full sweetening with the coming of Mashiach and the full redemption of the world.